Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. They're pulling him out.
10-1-1. Advise ready for gameplay.
God!
Our stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
Hey, buddy.
My camera's not
We had scheduling conflicts like 2 weeks in a row, and we're back.
Yeah, dude, it's
recorded
been one of those couple weeks. What was the first one? I don't even remember what all my excuses were. But I had gotten fucking vertigo because I had an ear infection, and that messed me up so bad.
Yeah.
I've had a little bit of vertigo before, but
I had
dude,
it the first time with my most recent bout of sickness.
it was horrible. I don't understand.
Well, my all my back issues that were contributing to my issues as a cop at certain points came back to haunt me a little bit. I think I told you at Christmas I pinched my sciatic nerve on the right side again, and half my foot went numb. But luckily, here we are 5 months later, and with some physical therapy, it's finally starting to wake up. So that's nice.
Really?
What we're saying
working?
is take care of your body, wearing your duty belt and getting in and out of the patrol car. The wear and tear, no matter how healthy you try and stay, the wear and tear is going to get to you. So the less healthy you are, the worse the wear and tear is going to be. So,
yeah. Hey, real quick. I know you're all the way in Idaho, but this used to be your stomping grounds out here. Did you hear about the deputy who was just killed in Santa Clarita?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
on his way to work.
Right. Yeah. No, he was coming home from work. He was working at NCCF, left after a fucking county double. So a 16-hour shift because LA County is still in the times of 8 hours on and fucking whatever off, 8 on. And it's like a 980 schedule. So, and now I hope they change this, but from what I last heard, and this is not our dedication, I'm not going to issue his name out or anything like that because nothing else has come out. And that
details are still emerging, but
right. But this is what I have a fucking problem with, and I know I'm just popping this out real quick, but dude, they said that it's an off-duty death. Right. It shouldn't be off duty. It should be on duty. You just worked a county double, a 16-hour shift, and you were coming home tired. You had just left. You are like a few miles from the facility. You get into a wreck probably because you're tired as shit because you just worked a double. Who knows what you worked prior? And then you pass away. That should be an on-duty death. It really should.
I'll give you a little context.
I'm a bit upset.
Last fiscal year, do you know how much the LA County Sheriff's Department spent in overtime?
Probably like fucking multi-millions.
$458 million. 3 months into 2025, they have already spent $131 million on overtime.
Wow. And that's not because coppers want to fucking work. That's being forced OT.
Yeah, they are on pace to spend over $500 million in overtime this year. Deputies are reporting they work up to 100 hours of OT a month.
Whoa.
100 hours of OT a month. That is,
oh my God,
2.5 extra weeks of work. That's every crazy. Month. If you're doing a 40-hour week, it's 2.5 extra weeks a month, bro.
Dude, we need a podcast, or not a podcast, just a show, not a show, an episode with some depths to come on and just talk about the fucking work-life balance bullshit that's going on.
We can always call our buddy. We can always call our buddy Justin, who moved up here and used to work LA Sheriff, because
I think we really should.
We should.
That's a good episode right there, because that's something that should be tackled, and that is kind of BS because you have no quality life. All these coppers are sitting there, the suicide rate in law enforcement is so high, and this adds to it, and it adds to morale. And if morale is down and you don't feel like your fucking department gives a fuck,
Not
That's
to
a big
mention when
thing.
you're overworked, you make mistakes.
Exactly, like crashing.
Yeah.
Oh
well,
my god, I'm that upset me. I heard it on the news, and I was like, dude, I was furious. I was like, no, man, that's horrible. But that's not what
Well,
we're
our
here to
guest
talk
for
about.
this week's episode, we can ask our guest for this week's episode how reasonable he thinks calling this an off-duty death would be. Who is our guest this week, Chuck?
Well, we have Kevin Dylan, the masterful Dylan. He got us Kevin. I'm not going to pronounce your last name, Kevin.
Cronister. I'm going to guess Cronister.
He is the CEO of Guardian Training Solutions, ICAC detective. He's a former SWAT squad leader. He's a child protection advocate, and he's a co-host of Screen Guardians podcast.
Well, hello, Kevin. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys.
So, real quick, for those people that don't know, please explain what ICAC is and what it means to be an ICAC detective.
Yeah, so ICAC is the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and so it's so you guys know what NCMEC is, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They're the number one nonprofit in the entire country that works with law enforcement to investigate crimes against children. NCMEC they generate 36.2 million cyber tips about child sexual exploitation a year. And it's on pace to be, closer to 37, 38 million in the next couple of years. But what NCMEC does is they take these cyber tips and then they distribute them to ICAC. The task force then takes the cyber tips and they send them out to the different detectives in all the different jurisdictions that belong to the ICAC task force. So it's not a task force in the traditional sense of the word, but it's basically a giant group of detectives from across the country that do nothing but work internet crimes against children.
Right. So for example, my task force that I was on was a narcotics task force. We all worked in the same building. We all worked on the same team. We all worked each other's cases. That's what you think of when you think of a traditional task force. They'll stand up a serial killer task force. They'll stand up an opioid task force, an auto theft task force. This is probably more accurately characterized as similar to JTTF or some of the other Joint Terrorism Task Force, some of those other organizations where there's a clearinghouse of information, and then that information gets sent out to affiliated or trained and investigators that this is what they do all the time. And so it's not just going out into the ether where it lands on somebody's desk and nobody sees it, or it gets round filed, or it gets forgotten about, or it doesn't get followed up on because somebody's got a huge caseload.
Right.
These go to specific detectives like you. Right now, what before we get too far into it, what kinds of things does ICAC typically deal with? I mean, internet crimes against children, I think, is a big, broad phrase, but there's a couple. We could all guess. There's probably a couple of things that I think people would be surprised that are under ICAC's domain.
So obviously you're, the typical child sexual abuse material or child porn is the most common phrase for that. Those cases are probably 95% of the cases that come across my desk are guys that collect or distribute or create the child porn and then either sell it or send it to friends or just create giant collections of the shit that they keep on all their devices. But then a lot of the other stuff that I'm seeing lately is
I was gonna say like the Sound of Freedom stuff.
That's exactly. So he was on the ICAC task force in that movie. That's what he was part of.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah. And so so it's a lot of those types of cases, but then I've been seeing a lot of sextortion cases recently where boys especially are targeted, and they'll be on social media and this really hot chick will reach out to them, right? And these are teenage boys, so they're like, oh yeah, dude, this chick's hot.
Hot chick's into me.
Yeah. And so they'll start chatting with her, and
some
she'll
fucking Russian slob.
That's
50-year-old
exactly
goes
what
from
it is. Actually, what it ends up being is some fucking Kenyan dude,
yeah,
from
a
Africa,
Nigerian
Hmm.
prince.
the Nigerian print. And so they'll send, she will send nude photos, and then she'll be like, send me a picture of your dick. And this kid will be like, oh, this is so awesome. And he'll send a picture of his dick. And then the next message is like, okay, cool. Now, if you don't want me to distribute that to your friends and your family, and then they'll know contact information for friends and family,
Oh shit.
and they'll tell them like, if you don't want this distributed to everybody, you need to go get me your parents' credit card and take pictures of it and send me all the information from your parents' credit card, or you need to buy me a bunch of gift cards and send me the numbers on the back, right? And
Mhm.
then these boys are like, well, um, okay, here's a couple $100 in gift cards. That's all the money I have. And it just keeps going, and they're
Right.
asked to do more and more. And I've been seeing, it's not a huge number, but I've been seeing some suicides that have occurred.
Shit.
13, 14-year-old boys
Oh my
who,
god.
to them, this is like the end of the world, right? If this picture gets out,
Yeah.
and so it's actually, it's awful, but those are increasing.
Wow.
And then every once in a while I get a case that's like an actual touch case that's occurring in my jurisdiction,
Mhm.
that doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the internet, but Nick Mick still got the tip, and so I look into a lot of that
Wow.
stuff too. So
And so
Wow.
if you're watching this on YouTube, or even if you're listening to it, go watch it on YouTube, like, subscribe, do all that stuff I'm supposed to say. But parents, watch for this symbol. This is one you should watch for.
yes.
This is the symbol of the Order of the Nine Angles. You should be wary of your kids, or if you see it anywhere. There's also numbers like 764, 696, CVLT. Uh, it's so many. No Lives Matter. I mean, there's so many of these groups that are all kind of affiliated under this idea
Mhm.
of 764, and Order of the Nine Angles, which literally is a self-professed, decentralized, satanic, neo-Nazi sextortion group. And that sounds like a mouthful, and you're like, how does
Crazy.
that? But it's true.
Yeah.
There is.
You know what's
It's
crazy
hideous.
is that when I was working, I was seeing a lot of this shit come from that Talking Tom app, where they were
The
and
cat.
then the baby monitors, and they were hacking into those, and they were taking photos of kids and stuff like that, asking them to do sexual things because it was the talking app and the talking cat or the dog or whatever its friends were, and it was just some person's voice coming through. It's like, haha, take your clothes off, and they were snapping photos of it, and then the moms would come in, and I'd be taking those cases, and I was like, holy shit. And now they're doing this, and this is something that I saw with a lot of Mexican nationals in Mexico calling people and extorting people with exactly what you're saying with the gift cards and all this stuff. And instead of, hey, showing like tits or something like that, and then getting photos back and then extorting them that way, they would hack into their stuff and track them and see, okay, your kid's over at a movie. They'd shut their phone off or do whatever they would do, and then they would say, we have your child and we're gonna kill them, and they would do shit like that, and then you'd hear someone
That's a
screaming in the
variation
background,
on
no,
the
don't kill
your
me.
son's been arrested. You need to
Mhm.
send us money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same type of shit. And I was like,
Mhm.
holy crap. And same thing, lady came in on the phone, like in tears, and she's like, my kid's gonna be killed. And I'm like, this is a scam. Hang the fucking phone up. Don't give him any money. I'm telling you, this
Yeah.
is a scam. And they'd be like, no, I'd grab their phone and hang it up. I'm like, call your kid now. They'd call, like, oh my God, you're safe. And I'm like, dude, how much money did you give him? And they would just constant things like that. So I can only imagine what it's like with these children and how many things that they're being asked and exploited of, because these are adults getting swindled. These are
Oh yeah.
children who don't even have the mental capacity to even understand or fathom what is going on. I mean, how is it working with these cases, and how stressful is that? Because you're dealing with kids. I mean, that's got to be really hard.
It can be incredibly heavy. I mean, especially because I've got 4 kids of my own,
Ugh.
and so it's hard sometimes to kind of like flip that switch and go from loving, emotionally attached, tender father to
Mm.
like, I gotta look at this clinically and not allow emotion into it, because otherwise I couldn't do the job, because I would just be fucking pissed off all day, and you know what I mean?
You probably wouldn't survive because your soul would
Nope.
be so tainted and
That's true.
like
That's
it would
true.
just be it would crush you
Yep.
at
Yep.
at a soul level.
Yep. Well,
Ugh.
you and I kind of talked pre-show a little bit
Mhm.
about like some of the mental health concerns, that not just the kids that are being exploited, but us on this side of the investigation,
Right.
what we deal with. You know, the human brain was not meant to look at child sexual abuse material, right? Like
No.
it's not healthy. And so to look at it and investigate it day in and day out,
God,
you
it's
know,
gonna be rough.
if you're not taking proactive steps for your mental health, like you're not going to be able to do it for very long. One of the detectives
Mm-mm.
before me, at my agency, ended up committing suicide, and
That's rough.
so you know, you gotta take a lot of proactive steps to take care of your own mental health.
Can you say what some of those proactive steps that you take are?
Yeah, for sure. I go and I see, I'll say her name, Dr. Prohaska, here in the Kansas City metro area.
Mm,
She's a clinical psychologist that specializes in law enforcement resilience, and
mhm.
so I have gone to see her, and it's incredibly helpful to go and basically have like a spot where nothing that you say is going to be held against you, or you know, reported to your agency or anything like that, and so you can get into the serious emotional things that you're dealing with.
Wow.
And so I always tell people, I'm like, if you're not seeing somebody, if you're, you know, succumbing to like the old school mentality of like, you know, well, if this fucking bothers you, you need to find a new job because that's just what we do, you know.
Right.
You got to talk to somebody, because it's not healthy.
Yeah, knock
And
that
then,
tough guy bullshit off.
well, and it's the, in my opinion, it's the opposite of tough guy bullshit. It's refusing to acknowledge
Right.
that, like, in order to be the man that your family, your kids, the community needs, like, you got to take care of your own shit. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you're no good to anybody, you know.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I couple that with a lot of physical fitness stuff, that there's a direct correlation, for me especially, between my mental health and my physical health. Um,
Oh yeah, big time.
you know, I've been training mixed martial arts for about 10 years. And there's something about going and getting my ass kicked that always makes me feel a little bit better, you know.
Mhm.
Or throwing
Um,
some punches.
or maybe kicking an ass every now and
Mhm.
then, you know.
Yeah.
I'm 37, and so there's less ass kicking than getting my ass kicked, you know. But the place that I train at, we've got, I think now we're up to 4 guys that are on the UFC roster, and
Well,
a lot of high level pro fighters, and so
I see
um,
about getting your ass kicked. I mean, that's some
hey man.
stiff competition.
Well, I tell people, I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
if I can just survive against these guys, then you know, I'll consider that a win, and I should be able
Oh yeah.
to handle any of these guys out on the streets, you know. But
That's true.
I can handle some
It
fucking
gives you the
tail.
confidence to handle your business.
for sure.
I don't know how you do the job without twisting up and folding the laundry of the freaking child porn and chomos that you deal with.
Mhm.
That is probably the single greatest
Oh yeah.
obstacle that I would have to overcome. And again, I never wanted to work the crimes against children stuff.
Mhm.
I had had enough just kind of being near it. One case we had, it was a child porn case, and at the time there was nobody available to transfer what was on his computer onto at the time CD-ROM DVD. Uh,
Mhm.
Nobody that was on duty knew how to do it, and we had to fulfill a subpoena ducis tecum, and I was the one that knew how to do it. So
Mhm.
I went back to the station and helped the crimes against children detective out by dumping all this evidence for him. But you can't dump the stuff without knowing which stuff that you have to dump, and so it's not like you can avoid seeing it. And
the worst, man.
Yep.
just that one incident of having to dump this stuff onto a computer, and that's not even reviewing, because somebody's got to review it, make sure it's illegal, all that kind of stuff. It just, yeah, it infects you. And I don't know how you do it. I would probably.
I don't either. I mean, I really truly don't. I mean,
You
I
flip
grew
that
up.
switch, dude.
That's exactly what it is, and
Yeah.
it's hard to explain to people who don't have to do it.
Mhm.
But it's literally, I mean, like you go, you walk into the office, and you just like compartmentalize everything,
It's
and
that
then
disassociation.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's necessary to be able to do the work. But again, like on the back end, if you're not doing things to better flip the switch back when you come home to your family, and when then you end up letting your family down, your kids down, and the community down, because you're not taking care of your own shit. And so I always tell people, I've told my partner before, like, hey dude, this whole like, oh, I'm not going to go see her, I don't need that bullshit. Like, you need just go get a checkup, just go
Yeah.
check in with her, right? That's all you need to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, it can be heavy, but there's a lot that you can do, and just spending time with my kids in a healthy environment around children helps to kind of counteract, um, the the bullshit that I'm seeing daily. But
Well, and having a solid family life, and
Yeah.
having a faith outside of yourself. And I'm not preaching to anybody to tell them what that needs to be.
Mhm.
But if you don't believe in something outside of yourself and a higher purpose and a higher calling and a higher good, then that's another strike. It's not going to be, it's going
Yeah,
to be
Yeah.
harder. So
yeah, I grew up devoutly Catholic. I've been Catholic my whole life, and so I will oftentimes sit at my desk going through this evidence, and I'll have my rosary out, or I've got pictures of
Mm.
Saint Joseph holding baby Jesus on my
Mhm.
walls in my office, because if people I try to tell people, I'm like, this stuff is evil. And like, when I say evil, I mean like a real thing evil,
Gosh.
not, you know what I mean, not just like a
Right.
theoretical, like I can feel it, and
Yeah,
so
it's the
This
devil
is
at work, dude.
subjective
yeah,
evil. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, without a faith life, it's incredibly difficult to be able to see this stuff, and to believe that, like, ultimately good is going to win, right? And
Yeah.
if you don't
Absolutely.
believe that, it's overwhelming. So
Yeah.
I
And
bet.
the existence of absolute evil implies the existence of absolute good, just so anybody, just in case anybody's wondering. So
yep.
I can't imagine, man,
Yep.
with the stuff that you deal with and go through. I can only, from my personal experience, from Tom's personal experience. I mean, we probably have something so very similar to what
Mhm.
you have done, but only scratching the surface of it,
Sure.
because we never worked that unit. We never worked
Mhm.
a crimes against child. I mean, I've helped out sex detectives and things like that, and I've handled a shit ton of child abuses, sexual assaults with kids and stuff like that, and that was tough. And then having to see pictures and stuff, but seeing that shit day in and day out. I mean, you would
Mhm.
have that maybe once a deployment period or twice a deployment period that you'd get one of those child cases, and it was rough, and you were like struggling with it when you're at home. And I can't imagine what you do on a day. I can't even imagine. I can't fathom it. And thank you so much for doing it, because there's people out there that they really need help, and that's you're doing the Lord's work. And having all that stuff up on your wall, uh, it's a reference point to keep you grounded and to keep you sane. And I totally get it. And that's wow.
Yep.
That's powerful, man.
Well, I appreciate it, man. That means a
Yeah.
lot to me, because it's, if they would let me stay in this position for the rest of my career, I would continue to do it. I've been doing it for 6 years now.
wow.
And there's just something about it, like the satisfaction of working these cases to its conclusion, and like putting handcuffs on these
Mhm.
guys, and there's something really powerful and cathartic about that
I
too,
bet.
and so Yeah, I love it. It's weird to say that that I love
Right.
it, but I do.
And it's
Um,
yeah, I get it.
so
It's
You're a real life
rewarding.
angel.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
actually
dude.
so I was sitting in my office today with my partner, and I was zooming in, so I got a search warrant return from Apple for somebody's iCloud account, and it had a whole bunch of pictures and videos and images, and some of them were very normal everyday life images, and then some of them were not normal everyday life images. But I found myself, which I do stuff like this every day, but for some reason today it made me laugh. But I was zooming into these pictures to try to figure out, like, is this an adult, is this a, you know what I mean, like, because I have to be able to say definitively that, like, yes, this is a child in order for it to be considered evidence. And I'm zooming in on this picture, and I'm like, I don't know, man. That kind of looks like an adult butthole. What do you think? I can't tell.
Right.
And I just started laughing, because I turned to him and I go, dude, what is our job? Like, is this
Right.
real life?
Is this a balloon knot or is this a
I I couldn't believe that
Oh,
I asked that question out loud. And I just found myself laughing. But that's another thing too, man. Like, if you can't keep a sense of humor about this stuff, it, you know, it
I,
can become rough too. So
I knew a
yeah.
cop and he worked vice at a major metropolitan agency whose initials are LAPD. And
Don't give it
he
away.
this was his job. I was talking to him one time. I'm like, "What are you working on?" And he goes, "Right now, I'm reviewing videos to figure out if this guy's gonna go beyond the fourth knuckle." And I was like, "What?"
Oh,
And it was essentially he had to review an actress's quote unquote performance in a film to find out if she had violated decency laws of porn, which it, 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 it's still it's still
I
mind
didn't
boggling
know
that
there
you
were
have
decency
to.
laws in
There
porn.
used to be there. So, I mean, there basically he told me fisting is illegal to do on camera, and so I had to watch to see if that's what happened. And I'm like, what kind of a job do we have? Like it's the same question.
Pornhub, you're
yeah,
fucked.
yeah, 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 man. I don't know. I
It's
laugh about
gross.
something every day,
You
because
you
I'm
have to.
like,
Yeah,
I can't
laugh
believe
real
that, like,
time.
I'm getting paid to
You know,
do this. Like, this is
you, you know, and I think that's where a lot of like, because you have to have a sense of humor in law enforcement. You have to, and sometimes it gets caught and it looks bad, and you're like, because you're laughing or whatever. But it's your body's reaction to dealing with the shit and the trauma that you're dealing with.
yeah.
And then sometimes when you're outside of work or before work or in between calls and you're silly as shit. Sometimes people are like, these people are idiots. Like, bunch of dumb meatheads or a bunch of dumb cops, a bunch of stupid, like you're stupid or whatever because you're constantly joking around, you're acting like kids. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. When we go to work and we're in work mode, it's a different person. And then we need to be able to decompress and download. So we're silly outside of work. We tell jokes, we fuck around, sometimes we party hard and we just do dumb shit because we need a way to decompress and to let
Mhm.
go with some of that stuff. So a lot of times laughter is the best medicine because it releases endorphins in the body and allows you to feel better and increases serotonin, dopamine levels, and all that other things to make feel good chemicals, And I think that's where a lot of times, sometimes we get a bad rap as law enforcement because either we joke around or we do something stupid or we say a shitty joke or sometimes we use dark humor, kind of like with the whole
Yeah.
fucking butthole thing. It's dark humor, but at the same time, it's how do you fathom dealing and seeing with the stuff that you're seeing without bringing some light to it? Because it's if you keep in the dark, you're going to stay in the dark. If you bring in some of the
Yeah.
light, you can have a better time coming out of that dark, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Right.
I think detectives specifically can be some of the most obnoxiously goofy, shitty sense of humor type people that you can be around, because it's like, I remember being on patrol, and like you guys are saying, like, you're going from call to call to call, right? And
Hmm.
most of the time you're dealing with assholes, you're dealing with, people that you want to smack. but I find it very different from like sitting in an office. For some reason, being stuck in one place and just like having to look through just like this catalog of shit, as opposed to like being
Mhm.
able to maybe drive around with your windows down a little bit to kind of decompress or whatever. So a lot of the detectives I work with, dude, are they're funny, but it's sometimes you have to close your office door so that your supervisors don't hear you.
Yeah, I mean, there are just times where you have to decompress, or you have to do things to deal with things, or you have to have conversations, and oh well, like
Yeah, it
it's
is what
not
it
going to
is.
be, it's not for everybody. But I'm
Right.
again, there's people that the way I look at it is like I could no more be a motor officer than I could work as an ICAC detective. But when I truly say that, I could probably do ICAC stuff for a short period of time,
Mhm.
and because it's important work, and I would feel like somebody needs to do it, and if I'm available, I'll do it. But please don't stick me there the rest of my career.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
tough. So
Well,
we talked a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say that it's actually it's kind of an interesting um, story about how I started getting into the ICAC world because it was something I'd wanted to do since I was a child, and my parents remember me um, telling them that like when I grow up, I'm gonna be a police officer that arrests people who hurt children. Like that, I was very specific about that when I was younger. And so I always tell people that it feels more like a vocation or more like a calling to this specific spot than it does something that I chose to go into. So yeah, I just you were saying you can put me there for a little while, but
Mhm.
not for an extended period of time. And for me, it was the opposite. It was like I spent my first 10 years at my agency working to get into that position, and now if they try to take it away from me, I'd go down kicking and screaming.
Right.
So
Right,
um,
right.
I mean, I would say this, bro. Like a lot of people say God has a plan, right? We're put
mhm,
on this earth for a reason. And you knew from the very start what your purpose was, which is
yep.
crazy. And, not crazy in the sense that you know what I'm
No,
saying.
just
Well,
yeah.
you might
But
be crazy, but that's not why.
I mean, a
no,
little
but
bit, yes, a little bit crazy.
you're put on this earth for a reason, and you have a calling. No, this is
Yep,
your calling. I would say that you're here for a reason, and people need protectors, and this is one of the ultimate protecting jobs. Like this is the protector of protectors. Like you're protecting the
sure.
children, and that is amazing. Like you're the patron saint of freaking kids, like protection of kids. Like that's amazing. I mean, dude,
Well,
you knew from the very beginning what you were going to do, protect kids,
yep.
and you're doing it, and that is only so
So
many people get to do that.
so
Yeah.
we
So
talked about
I
this
appreciate it.
a little bit before we started, but I wanted to touch on it while we're talking on the show, which is this is a lot more like people might wonder. Oh well, I mean, you know, how often can you guys possibly have to deal with this stuff? A lot more than you think, and I mean a lot more than you think. Like take as much as you think we have to deal with this stuff, double that, and then triple that. Like that's the kind of like geometrically larger. So how, from your experience, I mean, how bad is it?
I call it an epidemic, an absolute epidemic. So, what I mentioned earlier was that NCMEC received like 36.2 million cyber tips in 2023 alone.
Wow.
And they haven't released the updated data, but I would bet that it's climbing towards 40 million. And there's only 800,000 law enforcement officers in the country, and that's not ICAC detectives. That's total.
Total
Every
cost.
law enforcement,
Yep.
right? 800,000. So even if you took every cop in the country and assigned him ICAC cases, you're still talking, a crazy amount of cases per officer, and it's just not. It's not doable. And I think there's only 100 ish ICAC detectives across the country that are part of the task force. So,
Really?
So
I
if
mean,
if we did the math, that's 45 cases per cop. So you'd have to deal with one internet crime against children per week all year long minus your vacation.
mhm, mhm. And that's and that's if every officer was assigned ICAC tips. So then
Right.
you pare that down to 100, 200 of us. It's just not doable. It's not feasible. We don't have the resources. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the money. We don't have, uh, well, we can talk about that too, because agencies do a super shitty job of allocating resources to this particular problem. Um, we've got, so I have close to 2,000 cyber tips sitting in my queue on the ICAC database alone, like 2,000 of them. My agency has 2 detectives assigned to those 2,000 cyber tips. Now, for every cyber tip that I open a case on, and I do search warrants and subpoenas, et cetera, you're talking months worth of work. So if I take 10 tips at a time and open 10 cases and work all 10 of those cases like I should, thoroughly and efficiently, by the time I wrap those 10 cases up and put handcuffs on somebody, I have 50 more tips that came in or more that came into the database. So we're not even making a dent. I mean,
That's
and I've
disgusting.
it's awful, dude. And I have asked over and over and over again, like, hey, I need 5 more detectives back here. Like this, we need to be making this a priority. And dude, I just can't get any traction. I can't get any support. I can't get any resources. It's almost like, and you and I think we talked about this beforehand too. It's almost like if they don't acknowledge it's a problem, they don't have to admit that they've been fucking up and not addressing the problem, you know?
Right.
So the issue is that it's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, because then we have to admit that like law enforcement does a pretty shitty job of investigating these types of cases with the amount of resources that they should. We have, I mean, you think about like the number of DUI check lanes and the number of other
Right.
stuff that we pour, and not that those are obviously very important, right?
Mhm.
But if we've got the resources to like put several people on stuff like that, it just doesn't make sense to me why this hasn't become a bigger issue, or um a bigger spot where they put resources.
Well, I mean, look at Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. He came out recently in the last couple days and gave a press conference saying, if you come after our kids, we're coming after you. If you harm our kids, we're going to put you in jail. We're going to put you behind bars. And there is no bars that there is no place that we will not go to put you behind bars if you harm one of our children. And it's like he gets shit for that, like, because I don't know, and not to get political, but because he was appointed by Trump or whatever, but he's out there trying to protect kids, saying that this is a massive issue. This is a major issue and it's not even broadcasted over all the news branches. Like, they don't care. It's no one's broadcasting. It's crazy to think that you would think that people are harming the children, and you think there'd be a bigger uproar, but it's not, because maybe it's not affecting them right away. It's kind of like the people who want to scream to defund the police until they need the police. You know what I mean? It's not happening to them, so why should they care? It's not happening to their family, so why should they care? But everyone should care, because it could happen to your kids. It could happen. Your child could be abducted. Your child could be sold into slavery, and or your kid
commit
could be
suicide
exactly
because of a sextortion or
or
Right.
that. Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Well, and make no
It-
mistake, as we talked about those groups like the 696 and 764 and Order of the Nine Angles and blah 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 blah. There's a point system that these people get. It's a game. It's literally a game
Mhm.
where they get awarded points for every heinous thing they get somebody to do through sextortion, up to and including the highest like point score you can get. One of the highest point scores you can get is suicide and homicide. The highest point score you can get is if you can blackmail, sextort somebody into a mass shooting.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Yeah, and people don't realize that, like, these guys are connected to each other, like, across the country. Like, if you think that these guys aren't getting on Discord channels and chat rooms and different groups like that, and coordinating and working with each other to teach each other and to learn from each other about the best ways to um, groom kids. Or, I mean, they've turned it into a science. Like, there is a grooming process that
Mhm.
they follow almost to a T.
Mhm.
And they learn it by getting together and coordinating with each other. Like, this is not, it's not just like, I tell people that, back when we were kids, right? Like, we might come across, a couple of pedophiles within our community, throughout our entire childhood, and we would never even really know who they are because, we weren't, maybe we didn't go to church with them, or we didn't see them at the grocery
Right.
store. But now kids, they're not just connected with the people in their community, they're connected with billions of people across the world. So these pedophiles don't even have to work to groom victims anymore, because these kids are just coming to them on different social media applications or video
Yeah.
games. Fortnite and Roblox
Big one.
is like pedophile center right now.
Yep.
um, where they meet these kids, they play with them, they get to be the cool adult, right? And then they gift them some V-Bucks for their Fortnite characters so they can buy some cool skins. And then
Mhm.
they talk the kid into, like, oh dude, here's my cell phone number. If you ever want to talk about strategies for the game, hit me up. And then before you know it, this kid's sending dick pics or whatever. And
Mhm.
then it's just like
Yeah. It's horrible.
the networking that these guys do rivals any networking that you see in business. Like,
Can I ask you a question? And I would be remiss if I didn't
yes.
ask this question. You see influencers on social media, and there's a bunch of them that I seen. There's like fuck, like I wasn't even looking; it just came across my feed. It was like five
Mhm.
different influencers, and what they're doing is they're going out and they are propositioning these pedophiles, having them meet at a local area like a Walmart or something like that, and then they come out
Yep.
with cameras, and they're just regular random citizens, but yet they have a following on Instagram or social media or whatever YouTube channel they have. And then they come out and catch them, and they call the police, and sometimes they beat the fuck out of them on
Yeah.
camera. What is
Yep.
your take on that?
So
I like it. I'm all for it.
my my personal opinion is, yeah, beat that ass, right? Like, these
Right.
guys deserve everything that you give them. um there's no due process when it's a citizen on citizen kind of a thing. So it's like,
Mhm.
handle your
Whatever source
business.
is reasonable and necessary to effect the arrest.
Yeah, but like, when a citizen shows up and does this stuff, it's like, awesome, and it's exciting, and we like watching it, and it makes us happy because we all hate pedophiles. And
Well,
that's my,
I would hope.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, us, as in, I guess,
Normal people.
normal, yeah,
Yeah.
normal people.
Yeah, if you use the
Um,
phrase minor attracted person, you're wrong.
oh, don't get me started.
Break your fucking
I
kneecaps. Yeah.
That's, yeah, I don't get me started. But the other side of that coin is,
Mhm.
most district attorneys' offices will not charge these guys if it's a case of a citizen pretending to be a child, gathering all this evidence, then going and confronting this person and taking it to law enforcement. Most DA's offices are saying, we can't charge that because there's specific ways that you have to collect these chats to
Right. Yeah.
avoid, you know, um,
The chain of evidence.
chain of
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
System.
And so they won't charge it. And so, from a professional standpoint, I'm like, dude, I love watching it, but at the same time, it does make my job a little bit harder sometimes because people will bring me information and they'll be like, here we go, we did it all for you, it's all right here, go arrest the guy. And I'm like, dude, it's not that simple. And then they get pissed because they don't think I'm doing anything, right?
Right.
So it's, yeah, I mean, um, I I like watching it too. But I've had people where I've had to be like, hey, like I appreciate what you're trying to do.
Right.
But just if you have information for me, just give me the information and let me do the investigative side of things so that we can get this guy in
Mhm.
cuffs and in prison where he belongs,
Right.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
And and like for those of you that like watching Chris Hansen, I mean, this is getting to be Chris Hansen in real life. Yeah, and not that Chris Hansen isn't doing it in real life. He is. Like, what did he just they just did a sting, and the guy that showed up was a well-known activist for BLM, and they chased his ass, and when they finally caught him, he's like, I had the number for the Center for Missing and Exploited Children on my phone. I was going to help rescue this kid. And Chris Hansen's like, the texts tell a different story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's just you can have like Facebook Marketplace. It's eBay, right? Like they can be reaching out and trying to groom or contact kids through anything.
Yeah.
There's so many
That you
so many
can
ways.
anything that the internet has created to communicate via, they can exploit it to try and get your kid.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to be an alarmist, because I mean, yes, the odds are that your kid, most kids aren't victimized by the internet and by a pedophile.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the dangers of the internet and their exposure to the chances are low. It's not. It's
No.
just the difference, I think, is how you educate them. Correct?
Yeah, 100%. And that's, so the Screen Guardians podcast that I do with my partner Katie, we also started a nonprofit called kidsdigitalhealthhub.com, and it's basically just a giant repository of resources for parents and kids to educate them about this stuff, because I started to realize that, like, I've got these thousands of cases coming across my desk. I can't address all this stuff uh, reactively. Like,
Right.
there has to be something I can do on the front end so that these don't even come across my desk, because I can't approach this problem reactively, because we see how that's working. For every one I do, I get 10 more.
Right.
So I'm like, what can I do on the front end? And this was the only thing I could think of, was to try to educate parents and kids on the front end to try to prevent these from coming across my desk. So we do a lot of stuff. I go and I speak to schools, and talk to kids about, like, what they need to look for and how they can identify the grooming process. Because the problem is, I think that law enforcement for a very long time didn't talk about this problem for a number of reasons, but one of them was it was always like well, we don't want to alarm the public and
Right.
cause panic that this is an issue, right? And so
Hmm.
we didn't do a good job of educating. And now we're kind of seeing the fruits of that, where parents don't even really understand the full breadth of the
Right.
problem. And so, with my uh, podcast, it's a pretty raw, like, hey, this is real life. This is what I'm actually seeing. It might alarm you. It might make you feel unsafe. But the reality is there's like a few things that parents can do that make your kid go from might be um, a victim to, like, almost no chance of being a victim. And they're very, very easy, logical things. It's stuff like actually monitoring your kid's shit. Like,
Mhm.
take their phone weekly and go through
Right.
it. Like, you
Yeah.
wouldn't believe the number of parents who don't even know their kid's passcode to their phone.
Mm-mm.
I have parents that'll bring me a phone and be like, my daughter was sexually extorted. Here's her phone, and I'll be like, okay, cool. What's the passcode? And they'll be like,
I don't know.
well, yeah, we believe in privacy in our house, and
Mm-mm.
so,
Nah,
and
dude.
I'm like, dude, privacy in my house for my kids is you get to go to the bathroom with the door shut. Like
Yeah.
that's, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Right. And that's because I don't want to smell your shit.
well, yeah, exactly,
That's
exactly.
the only reason.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And even my 13-year-old son, he just got an iPhone, um, because he's starting to do things, sleepovers and stuff where he needs to be able to communicate with me. But his internet to his phone is like gone. Like I took it off. Like he cannot access the internet on his phone. The only thing he can do
Wow.
is text, call, etc. And it's not because I don't, trust the kid, or I don't, but he's a teenage boy. And so it's like the more uh temptation I can remove, the less he's going to be exposed to things
Mhm.
that could potentially make him a victim,
Right.
Absolutely.
So
So my daughter, when she asked as a teenager for a social media account, and this was admittedly when she first asked for a social media account, social media was probably less dangerous and exploitative than it is right now, because the people hadn't weaponized it as prevalently yet, right?
yeah.
It's not that there
Right.
weren't dangerous places on the internet, but you could kind of safely avoid dangerous places on the internet if you knew,
Mhm.
how.
Mhm.
And my daughter asked for an Instagram account. And if I had it to do over again in this day and age, at the age she was, I think she was 14,
Mhm.
I would not have let her have an Instagram account at 14, maybe 15. I don't know. But regardless, when her first social media account, her first account of any kind like that, she had to get an email, and she had to go to social media. And I essentially said, 100% any account you have, I need the username and password, and you will have it at my discretion. And just so you're aware, there is no privacy. I will log in anytime I feel like it, look at what you're looking at, look at what you're posting, check your messages, see your direct,
Yep.
and those are the terms and conditions under which
Yeah.
you will have it. If you don't agree to those terms, then there is no agreeing. It is just, it's not happening.
Yeah.
There's no negotiation.
Absolutely.
Those are the only conditions under which you would be allowed to have any of that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
100%, dude.
Call me an
I did the
asshole.
same thing with
No,
mine.
I see. That's the thing is I don't think as a parent, like, I don't think it's our job to be friends all the time, right? Like
No.
And ever.
Never.
sometimes like dad's gonna be a little bit of an asshole
And we should be.
for your
Yeah.
benefit,
Until
right?
you're an
Right?
adult, we're not friends.
No.
That's what I tell
Right.
my kids. I was like, we're not friends. I was like, don't
Yeah.
misconstrue me being nice to you as we're friends. I was like, I'm
Right.
your dad, and
Right.
I'm trying to raise you to be a productive adult, but make no misunderstandings. We're not friends.
Mhm.
I'm your father.
Mhm.
When you turn 18 and you're a legal adult and you're out on your own providing for yourself, that's a different story. And our dynamic will shift and change. I'll always
Sure.
be your father, but at that point, it'll be different. But make no misunderstanding. Don't take my kindness for weakness. We're not friends. I'm your father, and that's it. And you shall
Yep.
respect it. And if anytime I want to go into your phone, I'm going into your phone.
Right.
And you're not changing passwords. I have access to everything. And I think Apple does a decent job of like user permissions with kids, because
Mhm.
you can choose at a certain age. I think it's 15 or 16 where they pull it off. I think it's 15 where they start pulling off some of the parental controls. But I don't have access. I know her password. I have access to her email. Only thing I don't have access for is her Instagram. But I follow her on Instagram, and I just allowed her to have an Instagram. And those things are like, I didn't even want her to have an Instagram until she was 18, because I know how nasty Instagram is. You know, every time you turn a corner, it's something disgusting on Instagram. It's some female exploiting herself, or some guy exploiting themselves on purpose for likes. And it's like, that's not something that I wanted to introduce. But I was like, well, at some point you're going to have to start getting. I don't want you to be 18.
These poor teenage boys are just inundated with it.
Fuck. It's so horrible.
It's,
Yep. Well, I tell my wife too, I'm like, you know, there's a certain age range where you have to keep all of this stuff away from them, right? But then there's also a certain age range where you have to allow them to know that it exists and teach them how to fight it themselves, because you're not always going to be there, right? So I actually agree with you that, like, at some point there needs to be like a test period of like, okay, here's your Instagram account, like, if there's issues, you need to come talk to me, because it could be a problem, and you need to kind of allow them to sink or swim, for a lack of better terms, with the understanding that, like, you're going to be monitoring it, you know.
So well, I'll say this as we start to wrap up. I've always told my kids, my job isn't to be your friend, my job is to raise you to be somebody I want to be friends with. And that's the God's honest truth. I told them very early on, I said, this is not a democracy, this is a dictatorship, and I am Hitler, and your mother is Mrs. Hitler. And the bottom line is, no matter what you think happens, she was my girlfriend before she was your mother, and don't you ever disrespect my girlfriend, period. And they grew up with that mentality of, look, dad and mom are the ultimate authority. And all life and function and lights and food and everything is a gift from God, and God is dad and mom, right? You exist, you have nothing without us. And there's a little bit of that old school return to my grandfather used to say children should be seen and not heard, right? And if you spoke up, I said this to my niece the other day, if you spoke up in a group of adults at 14 years old, he was going to look at you and go, nobody cares. Get away. Go. Nobody asked what you think. You had to earn the right to an opinion. And I'm not saying children should be seen and not heard. I'm not saying we go back to, the times when dad and mom didn't raise their kids and a nanny did it, and you only can't, but there is a level of that, Indiana Jones, when he's talking to his dad and his dad said, you left when you were becoming interesting, right? Like you don't always get an opinion until you earn an opinion, because you don't know shit about shit. Now you can ask questions all you want, and we can discuss your thoughts. But don't just chime in when adults are talking and think that your word carries the weight that everybody else's, because that just ain't true. So,
if you can't respect your parents, you can't respect God, and you certainly can't respect your fucking boss when you get into the workplace. So it's important to understand those things and build those foundational building blocks at the very beginning. And I totally agree with it.
Wow, this time has flown by.
Super fast.
I was going to ask you some other questions. I want to know about the most satisfying takedown, because I imagine the takedown's the best portion of your job. And
it's a lot of fun.
I think we might have to do another one where we can discuss some of the nuts and bolts and stuff like that.
I was just going to offer a part 2.
And we didn't even get to talk about Guardian training. So where can people? Let's just real quickly. What is Guardian training?
So I've got 2 separate initiatives that I'm part of. Guardian Training Solutions is my law enforcement training business. So we teach a lot of different courses, a lot of tactical related courses, and then we teach leadership stuff. And we have an online platform, in-person courses, etc. You can go to guardiantrainingsolutions.com and check out all the courses. There you go. It's we've got several instructors that are subject matter experts in everything that they do, and so if you're a law enforcement officer listening to the show, you want to get good solid training that's not bullshit check the box training, come check us out. And then on the flip side, I encourage everybody to visit kidsdigitalhealthhub.com and sign up for our newsletter on that end, and subscribe to the Screen Guardians podcast, because I talk a lot about how to protect your children online. That's on Apple Podcast and on YouTube as well. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and this has been a blast. We need a part two, because I didn't get to tell as many stories as I wanted to tell.
Yeah, I know. So,
So-
we'll have to talk to producer Dylan and Chuck about getting another date to have you back.
Yeah, that sounds
Absolutely.
And once again, it's the Screen Guardians podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
kidsdigitalhealthhub.com
great. Yep.
is for resources for keeping your kids safe online. And
Yep.
for officer training, it's guardiantrainingsolutions.com.
Yes, sir.
Kevin, thanks for coming on. And we always like to give our guests a chance to dedicate their episode to somebody. And I understand you do have a dedication.
Yeah, so I'd like to dedicate the episode to Master Deputy Brandon Collins. He was killed in the line of duty on September 11th, 2016. He was conducting traffic stops on a major highway in our area. He pulled somebody over and was approaching the vehicle, took care of business, got back in his car, and got rear-ended by a drunk driver, and instantly killed.
Ugh.
And the driver fled, and
Of course
there was a big
manhunt.
a manhunt for him, and he ended up getting caught, and he got sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison.
That's it.
And
Ugh.
so fantastic guy. I didn't get as much time with him as I would have liked. We only worked patrol together for a little while. He was a longtime veteran guy, and I was still a newer guy. So, but he was always the one that brought a fun, spirited atmosphere to the locker room, and could make anybody laugh, and was just an all around great guy. So, yeah, so I'd like to dedicate the episode to him.
Oh, rest easy, brother. We got it from here. And Kevin, I appreciate you coming on. We will get you rescheduled.
All right.
So we can hear some of those. We have to mark down specifically. Want to hear some great takedowns. Want to get to talk about some stories. And interestingly enough, there was something that we discussed about someone jumping out of the bushes and snatching your kid. And he says, the odds of somebody jumping out of the bushes and snatching your kid are low. And I said, well, I actually worked a case where somebody jumped out of the bushes and snatched up a kid. He's like, no shit. Like I always say that as an example of like, that's not how it works. And I was like, well, it does once at least.
Yeah, that shit actually happens.
So we should talk about that. Chuck, what do you got for us? Oh, Chuck's got to cough. That's what he's got.
Sorry.
For us.
Yeah. Didn't want to blow your eardrums out. Well, thank you all today for tuning in. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you're doing the Lord's work out there, and you're doing a job that most of us couldn't fathom doing. So kudos, bro. Like that's some tough shit. You're welcome. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you're already following us, we'd really appreciate it if you could share a post and help spread the word. You can also check the link in our bio on both platforms to find all of our social media, our media links, and website. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you're notified anytime anything new comes out. All that cool, funny mumbo jumbo, but just make sure that you're there so you can get all that good info. If you'd like to support us, head over to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com. Grab some gear. If you've purchased something, there's been some technical difficulties. Don't worry, we'll get back to you. You have a story to tell, or you know someone who does. We're always looking for law enforcement, veterans, corrections officers, dispatchers, firefighters, medics, ER docs, and ER nurses to feature on the show. If you're interested, email us at booking.warstories@gmail.com, or a better way is actually linkedin.com/War Stories Podcast. You can link up with our producer Dylan there, and he can get you booked ASAP. If you go to the booking.warstories@gmail.com email, it might take a little bit because I'm going to have to forward you. I'm going to have to vet it and do all that other stuff. If you go straight to Dylan, he can get you booked. If you have a LinkedIn, it makes it even easier for us because we can go through everything right then and there. So if you don't have LinkedIn, get LinkedIn. Exactly.
Yeah, you did.
We'd love to hear you. We'd love to have you on. We'd love for you to share your story. If you know someone who'd be a great fit, please send them our way. Also, check us out on TikTok at www.tiktok.com/warstories-locker-room. And you can always reach our producer Dylan there as well.
Yep.
Thank you again for the support. Stay safe.
And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.